Hi creative friends, I did a paper comparison project. Here's how it went and which one will be my new favorite for doing dog mixed media portraits. I make that type of portrait with watercolor, colored pencil, and ink on watercolor paper. I like hot pressed paper for its smoother surface rather than cold press, which for me can have too much texture for colored pencil and ink. There are 8 different papers in my little comparison project. The top row shown here are mixed media papers, which I included because I like to do sketches and practicing, etc. on less spendy paper. So I've got a Canson, Strathmore, and Fabriano mixed media paper. And then the pricier watercolor, 100% cotton, heavier weight, 300 grams per square meter. Hot press papers are Arches and Canson, Fabriano Artistico, Saunders Waterford, and Legion Stonehenge. I cut 5 by 8 pieces of each paper and have them all lined up here, left to right, top to bottom, starting with the 5 100% cotton watercolor papers. And then the last 3 in the bottom row are the 3 mixed media papers. Here I tried to get some close-ups to show that even though the watercolor papers are all hot press, that they do have a slight texture to them. Here's the Saunders hot press and then the 3 mixed media papers, which had like a medium tooth or vellum surface. Several episodes ago for the 30-day sketchbook challenge, I did this sketch of the Mount Rainier cloud shadow and decided to do that scene for this paper test. I sketched and then cut out this template of the mountain silhouette and then traced that onto each of the papers. Before starting to paint, I mixed up plenty of yellow, red, blue, and a bluish purple in the little containers there for the sake of consistency from one paper to the next. First up is the arches. So a big disclaimer here is that I don't, repeat, do not consider myself a watercolorist. I'm mostly looking at these papers for how they work for my mixed media, which is a combo of watercolor, colored pencil, and pen and ink. I would bet that for artists who are watercolorists, the vast majority prefer cold press paper or maybe even the rough surface. In fact, I'd be curious how much more cold press paper than hot press that the various companies sell. I'm betting it would be lots more. But that's one of the great things about art. There's different strokes for different folks. I've tried a variety of papers, but this is a first to keep repeating the same scene for a head-to-head comparison. The main thing I'm looking for is pretty good color absorbency. Where a lot of watercolorists seem to like a lot of movement and spontaneous mixing of wet colors, I'm looking for more color absorbency, control, and smoothness. Anyway, this project, besides being a test of the papers, was a test of my ability, or lack thereof, to work wet into wet and let the fluidity of watercolor just do its thing. I repeatedly was fighting the urge to fuss with the paint, like I'm doing right here. I had to keep telling myself to stop fussing and in this case go on to the next color and dropping in some blue here to indicate the striations, I guess you'd call them, of the clouds in the sunrise. Now that I think of it, picking a scene like this for this project set up a challenge for me. because usually I'm doing dog portraits with mixed media, and so I'm dealing with more subtle, muted colors, browns and tans, and not the bright colors of a sunrise like this. And I usually work when I'm doing watercolor for a mixed media, oftentimes a smaller area where I don't feel such a rush to get things done before the paint starts drying. And I'm also working in kind of a family of colors, like, for example, a background where I've got green and a yellowish green and a greenish brown. And so the colors kind of all work together a little bit easier. But this was interesting to do. Okay, speeding things up a little bit with time lapse, next up is the Canson Heritage watercolor paper. There was this darker edge along the one side, I think because this paper was in a block, and that was where I was plucking the adhesive off of that edge. It wasn't as noticeable when it dried. Now this is the Fabriano watercolor paper, and pretty quick I noticed that on this paper the colors were moving around quite a bit. Probably something that's enjoyed by watercolorists that maybe like to do florals and like a lot of spontaneous mixing, but me, not so much. I didn't get any more video of painting in the skies or the blue wash for the mountain, but here's the first four watercolor papers at this stage. The Arches, the Canson Heritage, Fabriano Artistico, and Legion Stonehenge. And then this next group starts with the Saunders Waterford watercolor paper, and then the three mixed media papers. Strathmore, Canson XL, and Fabriano 1264. And those bottom two are a lighter weight paper, and so you notice they've got some more, a bit more curling. Next is painting the shadow up in the clouds. This was a bit of an easier wash since it's smaller and just one color. So by this stage, several of the papers are emerging as probable favorites. And then after this, the next step is testing lifting. And that is where I re-wet the blue, some of the blue paint on the mountain and see how much color will lift off. And I actually don't want too much lifting. For me, I'd rather the paper have more absorbency and just a bit of lifting quality. Okay, moving along so this episode doesn't get too awful long. Here are just some clips of painting the pattern of glaciers and crevasses, etc., on the mountain. Some clips are the arches and some are the Canson Heritage watercolor paper, and the rest were all pretty much the same. So I think I've mentioned before that I am in Pierce County, Washington, which is home to Mount Rainier, or Tahoma, I believe is the Native Americans' name for the mountain. It is a dormant volcano, or dormant for now, and quite a landmark, visible in a lot of the Pacific Northwest, or visible when it's not raining. Here are the first four watercolor papers at this stage. The Arches and the Canson Heritage, which is becoming a favorite, the Fabriano Artistico, and the Legion Stonehenge, which I am also liking. The next group starts with Saunders Waterford, the fifth watercolor paper, which I am also liking quite well. Then the mixed media papers, of which I think the Strathmore here is a standout. Though I will say for the Canson here has the most vibrant colors. I think because it's a whiter paper. And then here we've got the Fabriano mixed media. All right, now the mixed media part of the testing starts. Here I'm using colored pencil to soften the edges of the snow pattern on the mountain. I'm looking at how well the tooth or texture of the paper will hold on to the colored pencil. The smoother and more evenly it will take up layers, the better. Sometimes doing the mixed media dog portraits, there can be a lot of layers of colored pencil. I also did colored pencil in the sky to even up the color and soften the edges of the clouds. I was trying to use a very light pressure and see if I could get a soft texture that didn't show a lot of pencil marks. I'm at the second to the last step of this project here, using a dark green watercolor to put in a foothill covered with fir trees. So I'll do that on all the papers, and then there's just one more step to go. The final mixed media element here is pen and ink. I'm using it to put some details in the trees. So all of these papers worked pretty well for the ink, but I have had problems other times with my ink pens catching or skipping or basically not working smoothly on some papers. For doing mixed media, the paper working well with ink is important to me. So here's the conclusion of this project. In the first group of watercolor papers, I preferred the Canson Heritage, top right, slightly over the Legion Stonehenge, bottom right. But the winner overall was the Saunders Waterford, top left in this second group. I liked how the watercolor absorbed well, colored pencil went on smoothly, and there was minimal lifting. For the mixed media papers, the Strathmore, top right, was a standout, though if I'm ever doing something and want vibrant colors, I would go for the Canson XL. Here's the winners: Saunders Waterford in the watercolor paper category and Strathmore for mixed media. Thank you for watching my little paper test experiment. Now there are a few other papers that I haven't tried yet, but that'll be a project for another day. Please visit again to check out my next video. I'll get back to something dog related. Thanks again. Bye.